So I'm going to run through a hypothetical scenario with you, and this scenario is for DoorDash. Now, as a DoorDash driver, can you imagine doing your deliveries but not getting a single tip ever? No tips at all. Would you still do this gig if you got 0 tips? Now, I know anyone from America watching this right now is saying, hell no, no tip, no trip. Meanwhile, my viewers over in Australia are saying, what are you talking about, mate? We do this all the time. I have never got a tip in my life. So this might shock you guys overseas just a little bit. So DoorDash in the customer application literally has no option, no physical way for a customer to input a tip. It skips all the tip screens that customers get over in the States. The entire delivery process has 0 tips involved in it. No pre-tipping, no options to tip after the delivery. The only way that a customer in Australia can tip a dasher is to literally contact support saying there's a problem with the order after the delivery is complete, and then say, there's actually no problem, I just want to give a tip of X value. So the entire payment model over in Australia is based around no tips, all trips. Kind of makes you question the business model a little bit, doesn't it? Especially when in one country, the entire payment model revolves around no tips and the drivers are paid fairly, whereas in another country, the payment to drivers is so little, so small, such small base pay that they rely on the customers paying extra to make it worthwhile for the drivers to make a living. So the tipping feature for customers in the app and drivers to see the tips in the Dasher app, it's a simple feature that DoorDash can just switch on and off based on country. So the question I want to run through today for Australia is, should we turn on tips for DoorDash? Should customers have the option to give us extra money on top of our base fare that DoorDash pays to reward us for good service? Well, DoorDash currently does have tipping turned off. Its direct competitor Uber Eats has it turned on. So as an Uber Eats driver, I can get tips through from customers, and customers are prompted, would you like to tip your delivery driver? And you do get tips through. So Australians are willing to tip, but they need the option to be able to do it. Like, it is ridiculous to have to say, I have a problem with the order, contact support, and then tell them that there's no problem, I just want a tip. That's a ridiculous process to go through. So, I don't know what the issue is why DoorDash has decided to turn off the customers being able to tip drivers. There would have to be a reason why they went through all the effort to disable this across on the customer apps and also the Dasher apps as well. So even though tipping is voluntary in Australia, people do decide occasionally to tip hospitality staff and also delivery drivers for good service. EFTPOS solutions provider Zeller released some of its data, and it's showing that Australians are willing to tip when they are prompted to tip. Its EFTPOS platform is designed for hospitality and retail and prompts tips from customers with pre-filled values selected. The data shows that Australians are willing to tip, and the Zeller data shows that the average tip percentage across the country is 7.13%, and the highest tipping state is Tasmania, with the lowest tipping state being Canberra, that place with all our cheap politicians. You'd think they could afford to tip, right? So if we looked at tips being rolled out for DoorDash, what are the pros and cons of it? Let's run through the pros first. So my thoughts around the pros are, well, for good service, we're going to get a tip from a customer if they think, wow, I really like this driver did a great job, they got it to me in a timely manner, it was all great, it was above and beyond what I expected, I'm going to tip this driver 10%. That is bonus extra money coming in for the driver for doing a great job. It's rewarding good drivers, whereas poor performing drivers probably won't get tips. The concept of pre-tipping I don't think is going to work in Australia. It'll only be post-tipping after the service is provided. And bear with me guys overseas, I'm just going to run through the Australian logic. The culture over here in Australia would be, why the fuck would I give you extra money for great service before you've even fucking done anything? That's the way it would be viewed over in Australia. It would be tipping post-service. But extra money for good service, that is definitely a pro for tips being turned on in Australia. Now the risk, and this is two things off the top of my head that I think of. The first risk would be if DoorDash starts to lower our base wage down, knowing that we now expect to get tips coming through. So we don't want our base wage lowered. We want to have everything paid the same, if not more from what it currently is, plus have the option for customers to tip for extra money for doing great service and going above and beyond. That's what we want. We don't want I think our current base lowest is $5.50 off the top of my head. And we don't want that drop down to say $3 or something like that, or what is it over America? $2.25, I think yous have is the lowest. So if you factor through, conversion rates, foreign exchange, $2.25 is probably around $3 in Australia. So we don't want that. We don't want base ripped down to peanuts. We're not working for peanuts over here, mate. Now, we don't work for peanuts, so we'll work for Vegemite sandwiches, though, won't we, huh? The second risk would be the culture shift of dashes in Australia. So no tip, no trip, huge thing over in America. Drivers declining orders without tips. In Australia, currently, that doesn't happen. We're just kind of looking at our acceptance criteria. Is this paid enough for us to accept? Now, if we had drivers sitting around and not accepting trips because there's no tip on it, and as I mentioned before, Australians aren't going to preload a tip onto an order. It's just not how we're wired. It's not anything we've ever done before in this country. It's a fucking foreign concept to us. So you got dashers sitting around saying, well, there's no tip on this order, no tip on this order, no tip on this order, and they're just declining everything without a tip. No one's going to fucking accept anything, which moves us into that new and I think destructive culture for dashers, where dashers start turning around and saying top dashers take all the shit orders, non-top dashers, they only take tips, and then dashers start to infight between each other. That's not what we want. What we want is to be all on the same team, all trying to make as much money and revenue as possible. No infighting, no dashers turning on the customers saying, fuck that customer because they didn't tip. We currently don't have that, and we don't want that. We don't want dashers angry at customers. We don't want customers blowing up at dashers because they're getting grumpy about not being tipped. We don't want that culture over here. What we want is good, fair pay, high pay where possible, of course. We want the job to be worth it. We don't want to fight between each other. We don't want to fight with customers. We don't want to fight and argue with DoorDash. We just want pay to go up, pay to be fair, and if tips do turn on, we want to receive that extra reward for gratuity, for doing a great job, going above and beyond, without impact to the way that we currently are paid. I don't want to see all the great forums in Australia that I'm currently involved with just turn around and just bickering about tips. I got a shit tip here. This customer didn't fucking tip me. Oh, no tip on this one. This one was fucked. That's the likeliness of what would happen. But mind you, over in the Uber Eats groups, even though tipping is turned on, we don't see that currently. And reason being is because Uber Eats is still paying very well for drivers, even without tips. So as long as DoorDash keeps paying well for drivers without tips, and then the tips are just a bonus on top, I think it would work. Currently, dashers don't expect tips in Australia, so it's just an added bonus. As long as the pay isn't reduced down because tips are coming in, I think everything will be happy as Larry. But what do you guys think? Let's get amongst the comments down below and let's have a little talk about this. So anyone from overseas over in America, you guys currently have tips. You are the experts on how this works. Can you let us know in the comments what's good about them, what's bad about them, what's broken about them? And anyone from Australia watching through, let me know your thoughts. Do you guys want tips over here? Do you not want tips over here? I'm kind of on the line where I'm like, it'd be great to get extra money, but at the same time, I don't want to see an impact to our pay or the culture shift for dashers over in Australia where we're just bickering and fighting and shit about fucking tips. Other than that, make sure you smash the like and subscribe button, and then get below in the comments. Let's have a talk about this. And until next time, guys, peace out.